What happens when a prince walks onto a daytime talk show stage expecting royal treatment and instead gets a reality check from a host who refuses to bow down? In just 37 seconds, one comment turned an already tense interview into television chaos that ended with security escorting a member of the British royal family off the set. Mark Consuelos settled into his chair that morning with his usual energy, ready to welcome his guest. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Prince Harry was scheduled to appear, promoting his latest venture, and the production team had spent weeks coordinating every detail. But what nobody expected was how quickly things would spiral out of control. The prince walked out to thunderous applause, waving to the crowd with that familiar smile. Mark stood to greet him, extending his hand for a shake. They both sat down, and Mark dove right in with his first question. "So great to have you here. Let's talk about your new project. What inspired you to take this direction?" Harry leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs. "Well, Mark, I think it's important for people like myself to use our platforms responsibly. Not everyone understands what that means, of course." Mark nodded, keeping his professional smile. "Right. Absolutely. Can you tell us more specifically about what you're working on?" "I'm getting to that," Harry said, holding up a hand. "You know, the thing about doing interviews in America is that everyone wants the soundbite immediately. In the UK, we actually have conversations." The audience fell silent. Mark's smile tightened, just slightly. "Well, we're having a conversation right now. I'm just trying to give our viewers some context." "Your viewers," Harry repeated, with an edge in his voice. "Yes, I suppose we should cater to them. Look, what I'm doing is creating a wellness platform that focuses on mental health. But it's not for everyone. It's for people who can actually afford to invest in themselves properly." Mark blinked. "So it's a paid service?" "Of course it's paid," Harry said, laughing as if the question was absurd. "Quality costs money. I'm not running a charity here, Mark, though I do plenty of charity work, more than most people could ever dream of doing." "I'm sure you do," Mark said, trying to steer things back. "Let's talk about the mental health aspect. That's obviously something you've been vocal about." "I've been more than vocal," Harry interrupted. "I've been a pioneer. I was talking about mental health before it was trendy, before every celebrity jumped on the bandwagon for publicity." Mark shifted in his seat. "I think a lot of people have been advocating for mental health awareness for quite some time." "Have they really, though?" Harry leaned forward. "Or have they just posted about it on social media? There's a difference between actually doing the work and performing for cameras." "Right," Mark said slowly. "And you feel you're doing the actual work." "I know I am," Harry said firmly. "I've lived through things most people can't comprehend. The pressure, the scrutiny, the expectations. I've earned the right to speak on these issues." The audience was completely quiet now, the energy in the room shifting. Mark pressed on. "Lots of people face immense pressure and challenges in their lives. What would you say to someone watching who's struggling, but can't afford a paid wellness platform?" Harry waved his hand dismissively. "They can find free resources. Libraries exist. YouTube exists. I'm providing a premium experience for people who value premium guidance." "Premium guidance," Mark repeated. "Yes, exactly. Look, not everyone is ready for the level of insight I'm offering. Some people need to start with the basics. My platform is for people who are serious, who have already done the groundwork." Mark put his cards down on his desk. "So let me make sure I understand. You're promoting a mental health platform that's only accessible to people with money, and you're saying that's pioneering work?" "You're twisting my words," Harry said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm literally repeating what you just said." "No. You're putting a negative spin on it. This is typical American media, always looking for the controversy angle." Mark's jaw tightened. "I'm just asking questions about your project. You're the one who brought up the cost and exclusivity." "Because you asked," Harry shot back. You wanted specifics. I gave you specifics. Now, you're acting like I'm the villain for being honest. I never said you were a villain, but if you're going to promote something on this show, I think our viewers deserve to know what it actually is. Harry stood up suddenly. Maybe this was a mistake. I thought we'd have an intelligent conversation, not an interrogation. Mark remained seated, keeping his composure. Please, sit down. We're just talking. Just talking, Harry mocked. You've been hostile since I sat down. I've been asking you about your project, Mark said, his voice level but firm. If you can't handle basic questions, I don't know what to tell you. Harry pointed at him. You know what your problem is? You think because you sit in that chair, you have authority over me, but you're just a talk show host. I'm a prince. The audience gasped. Mark stood up now, his expression hardening. And this is just a talk show. You agreed to come here. Nobody forced you. I came here as a favor, Harry said. Do you know how many shows wanted me? I chose yours because I thought you'd be respectful. Respectful? Mark's voice carried across the studio. I've been nothing but respectful. You're the one who's been condescending to me. To this show. And to our audience since you walked out here. I'm condescending? Harry laughed bitterly. That's rich. You've been trying to trap me with your questions, twisting everything I say. What have I twisted exactly? Quote me. Harry faltered for a moment. You know what you did. No, I really don't. Please, tell me. This is ridiculous, Harry said, looking around. Are we done here? We're done when you walk off that stage, Mark said. But let's be clear about what's happening. You came on this show. You made some questionable statements about exclusivity and elitism. I asked you about them. And now you're upset because you don't like being challenged. Challenged? Harry's face flushed. You're not challenging me, you're attacking me. And there's a difference. Asking you to explain your own words is not an attack. Yes, it is, when you do it with that tone. Mark shook his head. What tone? I'm speaking to you like I speak to every guest. The difference is most guests don't act like they're above having a conversation. I don't act above anything, Harry insisted. You literally just said you're a prince, and I'm just a talk show host. Because you were being disrespectful. How? Mark spread his hands. How was I being disrespectful? By doing my job? Harry's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Your job is to make me look good, to give me a platform to share my message. No, Mark said firmly. My job is to have honest conversations with my guests. If you wanted a puff piece, you should have sent me a list of approved questions beforehand. Maybe I should have, Harry snapped. At least then, I'd know what kind of ambush I was walking into. An ambush, Mark repeated, laughing without humor. You're calling this an ambush. Unbelievable. The producer approached the stage, but Mark held up a hand. No, it's fine. Let's continue. Harry, please, sit back down. Explain your project properly. Help us understand. I don't need to explain anything to you, Harry said. I don't owe you anything. You don't owe me anything, but you do owe these people something. Mark gestured to the audience. They took time out of their day to be here, to listen to you. The least you could do is have a real conversation instead of throwing a tantrum because someone asked you a tough question. A tantrum? Harry's voice went up. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm standing up for myself against a bully. A bully, Mark said, his patience clearly wearing thin. I'm a bully now. Yes, you are. You've been trying to make me look bad this entire time. You're doing that all by yourself, man. I'm just sitting here. Harry took a step toward Mark's desk. You think you're so clever, don't you? So smart with your little comebacks. But you're nothing. You're a nobody who got lucky with a hosting gig. The audience erupted in boos. Mark held up his hands, calming them down. Okay, that's enough. I think we're done here. Oh, now you want to end it? Harry said. Now that you've got what you wanted? What I wanted was a normal interview. What I got was whatever this is. Mark turned to the camera. We're going to take a quick break. Don't you dare cut away, Harry said. I'll do whatever I want, Mark replied. This is my show. Not for long, probably. Wait until people hear about how you treated me. Mark laughed. How I treated you. There are cameras rolling, Harry. Everyone just saw exactly how this went down. They saw you antagonize me. They saw me ask you about your paid mental health platform and watch you spiral because you couldn't handle it. Harry's face turned red. You're a disgrace to broadcasting. You have no idea how to conduct an interview. And you have no idea how to be a guest. You came here with an attitude. You've been dismissive and rude. And now you're melting down because someone didn't treat you like royalty. I am royalty. Not here. You're not. Here you're just another guest, and right now you're being a terrible one. Harry looked around wildly, as if searching for support. The audience stared back in stunned silence. This is insane. You're all insane. We're not the ones having a meltdown on live television, Mark said quietly. I'm not having a meltdown. You're literally yelling right now. Harry grabbed his microphone pack and ripped it off. I'm leaving. Good luck with that, Mark said. What's that supposed to mean? It means you signed a contract to be here. You can't just walk off. Watch me, Harry said, turning toward the exit. Mark called after him. You're really going to leave because I asked you about your project? Harry spun around. You didn't just ask me about my project. You tried to humiliate me. You tried to make me look like some out-of-touch elitist. Again, I just asked questions. You gave the answers. Your questions were loaded. They were straightforward. They were designed to trap me. Mark sighed deeply. Harry, listen to yourself. You're creating a narrative that doesn't exist. I asked you basic questions about something you're promoting. That's it. That's all this was. That's not all this was, Harry insisted. You had an agenda from the start. My only agenda was to have an interesting conversation. You're the one who made it confrontational. I made it confrontational? That's hilarious. You attacked me from the moment I sat down. Quote me, Mark challenged again. Tell me one thing I said that was an attack. Harry opened his mouth, then closed it. You know what? I don't have to justify myself to you. I don't have to stand here and defend myself against your accusations. What accusations? I haven't accused you of anything. I've just been responding to what you've been saying. Exactly, Harry said triumphantly. You've been responding. You've been on the defensive. That shows you know you're in the wrong. Mark stared at him. That doesn't even make sense. It makes perfect sense. No, it really doesn't. Look, if you want to leave, leave. But don't pretend this is about me attacking you. Own your part in this. My part? Harry laughed harshly. My part was showing up. Your part was ruining it. By asking you questions. By asking the wrong questions. There are no wrong questions in journalism, only honest answers or dishonest ones. Harry stepped closer to the desk again. Are you calling me dishonest now? I'm saying you're deflecting. Every time I try to pin you down on something specific, you change the subject or get defensive. Because you're not listening to me. I'm listening to every word. That's the problem. I'm listening, and I'm hearing someone who came here expecting to be coddled and is now upset that he's being treated like everyone else. I'm not everyone else. In this studio, you are. Harry's chest heaved. You have no respect, no class, no understanding of who you're dealing with. I'm dealing with someone who agreed to come on a talk show and is now throwing a fit because the host asked him questions. That's who I'm dealing with. A fit, Harry repeated. A fit. I'm expressing my displeasure at being mistreated, and you call it a fit. What would you call it? I'd call it standing up for myself. By insulting me, by insulting my show, By insulting our audience? I never insulted the audience. You said your platform isn't for everyone, that it's only for people who are serious. What do you think that implies about the people watching who can't afford it? Harry waved his hand. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? I meant it's specialized, high level. Not everyone needs that level of support. That's not what you said. Well, that's what I meant. Okay, so say that. Say it now. Clarify for everyone watching. Harry crossed his arms. I don't need to clarify anything. People will understand what I meant. Will they? Because right now it sounds like you're backtracking. I'm not backtracking. I'm explaining. You're explaining after the fact. Because you realize how it sounded. No, I'm explaining because you're deliberately misunderstanding me. Mark leaned back in his chair. Harry, I'm trying to give you a chance to make this right. Just be honest. Say what you actually think and feel. Stop dancing around it. I have been honest. Have you? Or have you been trying to sound good while saying something kind of crappy? The audience murmured. Harry looked around, in seeming to realize for the first time that he'd lost the room. This is a setup. You planned this. Planned what? Planned for you to act like this? How could I possibly plan for this? You invited me here knowing you'd go after me. I invited you here to talk about your project. You're the one who turned it into whatever this is. Harry pointed at him again, his finger shaking. You're going to regret this. Is that a threat? It's a promise. When people find out how you treated me, your career is over. Mark smiled sadly. Harry, there are cameras everywhere. People are going to see exactly what happened here. They're going to see me asking reasonable questions and you losing it. So, if anyone's career should be worried, it's probably not mine. Harry's face went pale, then red again. You smug. Arrogant. Careful, Mark warned. We're still on the air. I don't care, Harry shouted. I don't care about your show, your audience, or your opinion. You're beneath me. The studio went dead silent. Even the crew stopped moving. Mark stood up slowly, his expression serious. Get out. What? You heard me. Get out of my studio. You can't kick me out. Watch me. Security. 2 security guards appeared from the wings. Harry looked at them, then back at Mark. You're actually doing this? You just said I'm beneath you. You insulted everyone here. Yeah, I'm actually doing this. You'll pay for this, Harry said as the guards approached. You have no idea who you're messing with. I'm messing with someone who forgot how to be a decent human being, Mark said. Now leave. Harry looked at the guards, then at the audience, then back at Mark. For a moment it seemed like he might apologize, might try to salvage the situation. But instead, he straightened his jacket and lifted his chin. Fine. I didn't want to be here anyway. That was obvious, Mark said. Harry walked toward the exit, the guards flanking him. At the last moment, he turned back. You're going to regret this, Mark. I promise you. The only thing I regret is booking you, Mark replied. Harry opened his mouth to respond, but one of the guards gently guided him toward the door. The audience watched in silence as Prince Harry disappeared backstage, his footsteps echoing in the quiet studio. Mark stood at his desk, looking at the camera. His face was flushed, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. He took a deep breath, composing himself. The audience remained silent, but unsure how to react. Finally, Mark spoke. Well, that just happened. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. Mark shook his head, running a hand through his hair. I want to apologize to all of you for what you just witnessed. That's not the kind of show we run here. We invite guests to have real conversations, and sometimes those conversations get uncomfortable, but we always try to maintain respect. He paused, looking down at his desk. I asked questions about a project he came here to promote. That's my job. And when he didn't like the questions, he could have explained himself better. He could have clarified his position. He could have had a real discussion. Instead, he chose to attack me, attack this show, and ultimately attack all of you. The audience applauded. Mark held up a hand. I don't say that to get applause. I say it because it's true. When someone comes on television and says their platform isn't for everyone, that it's only for people who can afford premium services, that's a statement. That's a choice. And when I point that out, I'm not attacking them. I'm just highlighting what they said. He sat back down, gathering his notes. I hope Harry finds peace with whatever he's going through. I really do. But coming on a talk show and expecting softball questions, expecting praise without scrutiny, expecting to be treated differently than every other guest, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Mark looked directly into the camera. To everyone watching at home, thank you for sticking with us through that. I know it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me too. But I think it's important that we saw what just happened. We saw someone unable to handle basic questions about their own project. We saw someone resort to insults and threats when challenged. And we saw someone choose to walk away rather than have an honest conversation. The audience was completely focused on him now, hanging on every word. Mark continued, I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've interviewed hundreds of people. Some interviews are easy, some are hard, but they all have one thing in common: respect. Mutual respect between host and guest. And when that breaks down, when one person decides they're above the conversation, it falls apart. He shuffled his papers, signaling a transition. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with our scheduled programming. Thank you all for being here. I'm for supporting this show and for understanding that sometimes live television doesn't go according to plan. The camera pulled back, showing the full studio. The audience sat in their seats, still processing what they'd witnessed. Mark stood up, removing his microphone as the director called for a commercial break. The lights dimmed slightly, and crew members rushed onto the stage. In those final moments before the feed cut away, you could see Mark speaking quietly with his producer, his expression serious, but calm. The audience began talking among themselves, the energy in the room electric with shock and disbelief. What had started as a routine celebrity interview had turned into something else entirely, a moment that would be replayed and discussed for days to come. The guard at the stage door radioed to his colleague. Prince Harry had left the building, climbing into a waiting car without speaking to anyone. Staff members gathered in small groups, whispering about what they'd just seen. The makeup artist who had prepared Harry before the show stood with her hand over her mouth, stunned. Mark walked over to the audience during the break. Thank you all for being so respectful during that. I know that got intense. Several audience members reached out to shake his hand, offering words of support. He smiled, grateful for their understanding, but you could see the weight of what had just happened in his eyes. The producer approached him. That was handled perfectly. You gave him every chance to course correct. Mark nodded. I didn't want it to go that way. I really didn't. Nobody did, but you stood your ground. You didn't let him bully you. He tried, though, Mark said with a slight laugh. He really tried. The stage manager called out that they had 2 minutes until they were back on air. Mark returned to his desk, taking a sip of water and reviewing his notes for the next segment. The audience settled back into their seats, still buzzing with energy from what they'd witnessed. As the countdown began, Mark took a deep breath and straightened his tie. The lights came back up, the camera focused on him, and he smiled at the lens. But behind that smile was something else, a resolve, a determination that what had just happened wouldn't define the show, wouldn't change how he approached his job. Welcome back, he said when they were live again, his voice steady and professional. Let's talk about something more positive. Shall we? The show continued, but everyone knew that what had happened in the first segment would be the story everyone talked about. Not because of anything Mark did wrong, but because of how one guest chose to handle being asked simple questions about his own project. In 37 seconds of confrontation, everything had changed. The moment Harry said those words, "I'm a prince," and followed it with, "You're just a talk show host," the trajectory of the interview was set. There was no coming back from that kind of disrespect, that kind of arrogance. And Mark Consuelos, to his credit, didn't try to smooth it over. He didn't make excuses for his guest or pretend it hadn't happened. He called it what it was, held his ground, and when Harry crossed the line, he did what any host should do. He ended it. The audience would remember that. They'd remember a host who respected them enough to not let someone talk down to them. They'd remember integrity in the face of entitlement. And they'd remember the moment when a prince learned that titles don't matter when you forget how to treat people with basic decency.